you know, when you're growing up, that's when you're hearing, oh, marijuana relaxes your nerves. And then there was that movie with Wiz Khalifa and Snoop Dogg, and they were smoking weed, and they were so zen. It looked really, and I was like, I want to feel that. I don't think it was about, I want to be cool. It was, I want to feel how they're feeling.
Welcome to Reclamation, the podcast where conversations meet practical insights, guiding you through the maze of behavioral science to empower better public health outcomes. With a passion for bridging the gap between medicine, psychology, and sociology, Tabo brings a unique perspective to every episode. Get ready to reclaim your understanding of health and behavior. This is Reclamation.
Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of Reclamation. On today's episode, we have a very special guest. She's special because she's somebody so dear to my heart. She's somebody I've known for years. Like since when did we meet?
24 years ago
Yeah,
now?
I think it's been 24 years. So she's someone I know, someone I've grown up with, someone I've seen turn into this amazing and beautiful woman that she is. And she's gone through so much in life, so much that I'm hoping a lot of us can learn from and be inspired by her resilience and how she's overcome a lot of what life has thrown to her. She's Cecie. She's a good friend of mine. She was actually the one person who was my cheerleader when I had this idea of this podcast. So welcome to Reclamation, Cecie.
Thank you so much. I am so excited to be here. Look at you, the podcast.
Finally.
Beautiful.
Yeah, because the
I'm
last
so
time
proud
I
of
was
you.
on your podcast.
Yes. And you didn't even know that you do this. And I'm just so proud of what you've accomplished and what you're doing. It's really beautiful to see.
Thank you. Like you were part of the inspiration with your podcast. It's like, if Cecie can do it, I can do it too.
Oh, I'm humbled.
Yeah, so she's a marketing professional. She's a mental health activist. She's very passionate about human behavior. And she has a lived experience that has led to her passion and wanting to see other people do better. Can you tell us about that? Like, because I remember when we met years later after going some time without having been in contact, she shared her passion for mental health and a little bit about her story. So I'd like other people to understand, to say, what led to you? Why mental health? Why do you care so much about it?
Okay. Hello, everybody. Cecie, as you have introduced. So actually, I only recently became very vocal about it. I always did it in the background. But over the past few months, I have seen how there's a gap in the mental health space. And a lot of us are struggling with demons that we face silently. And I think that is also how I came about with Behind Closed Doors, because I wanted to talk about things that we're hiding behind closed doors. So how did mental health come about? From as early as I can remember, I think 14, I would always be overcome with this overwhelming sadness, right? And I never really understood what it was. And obviously you can't share to anyone to say, oh, I'm sad, because everybody gets sad. And then obviously I attributed it to maybe so much that had been going on in my life. I have been surrounded by a lot of loss and a lot of trauma. I think that is what kind of started all of that, right? Yeah. By the time I was 15, 16, I was having blackouts. I was not eating. I was not sleeping. All I did was just rot. Oh. And it was so bad, so much that I had to be pulled out of school because of that. And this is something I've never shared with anybody, huh? Wow. I had to be pulled out of school for a year. And I was just rotting away. And this is when I discovered marijuana. So there was somebody who was living in our area who would always give me, some joints. And that is the only way I would, talk to people, smile, do all this other stuff.
So, hold up. How did you get to discovering the marijuana part? Like, how did you, the first time that is, do you remember what what led you to think, let me try this out?
I think
Did you know that it would make you feel better? Were you hoping? Did you search for some things that didn't work and marijuana was one of those you bumped into?
To be honest, I think it was just around the time, as a teenager, you're trying to, you're being woke. Like, we're trying alcohol, and I wasn't really a fan of alcohol. I tried that. It didn't work out for me. I think I would throw up all the time. So I knew that, okay, I am not an alcohol person. And, when you're growing up, that's when you're hearing, marijuana relaxes your nerves. And then there was that movie with Wiz Khalifa and Snoop Dogg.
Yeah.
And they were smoking weed. And they were so zen.
It looked cool.
It looked really... And I was like...
want that.
I want to feel that. I don't think it was about, I want to be cool. It was, I want to feel how they're feeling. Because the demons that I was fighting daily in my mind, I just wanted some silence. So when somebody had that and I had the opportunity to try it, and in fact felt how I saw it on TV, it was beautiful. And this is something I did privately. For the most part, my mom traveled a lot.
Okay.
So it was not easy for her to tell that something's happening with my kid is starting to do drugs or any of that, right? So I started the marijuana. Whenever I'd feel some type of way, and then now it became to a point where I'm smoking maybe 4 to 6 joints in a day. If I don't smoke, I'll not sleep. If I don't smoke, I will not eat. I will not,
So you
I would not function.
Dependent.
Yes, I became very dependent.
Mm-hmm.
And then it got to a point where I don't feel anything else, just the high. And I started self-harming because I'd want to feel a different pain from what I'm struggling with. So I'd harm myself, slit my wrists, just so I could feel a bit alive. And now I started losing time because of that. I don't know if it was because of the marijuana or I really don't know, but I'd have blackouts. And so my mom sent me to the hospital to get my blood tested because maybe you have low sugar or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And when I got there, they tested everything. Everything was okay. And the doctor, spoke to me for a little bit, trying to understand when all this started, how I feel around just before I black out or after. Mm-hmm. And he told me that, what, your case needs a psychiatrist because it seems you have chronic depression and anxiety. Mm-hmm. So, but how he told me, and now that I think about it, I'm like, it could have broken me further because he said, if you continue down this path, you will die. And so as a teenager, as a 16-year-old, all I've heard is, I'm going to die.
So that freaks you out.
So I go home and I'm telling my mom, okay, so I'm going to die because I have something called anxiety and depression. And the grace that this woman showed, I'm very thankful to this day because an African parent being told that your kid has a mental illness is really, nobody wants to have a kid.
That was like 10 years, over 10 years ago.
That was over 10 years ago. Nobody wants to have a kid who's broken. So, I go to the psychiatrist and they do all the assessment. And yes, that is what I have. So they're giving me all these pills, antidepressants, anti-anxiety meds, sleeping pills. Yeah. So I'm on a cocktail, right, of all these meds. And so I have to now work the meds and the marijuana because I'm still abusing that, right? And now it means
Did your doctors know you were using?
No, nobody. Till this day, till now in the podcast.
This you don't know.
Nobody knows. So the medication did not work. They instead numbed me because maybe the chemistry with the marijuana or maybe my body was not working with it. Because also you need to realize that at that time, over 10 years ago, that was trial and error. mental health wasn't something that, okay.
It's just something we're still
right now, exactly. But at least where we are at now, it's much better to manage.
We've
made progress in that area. But then it was really try and error. So, okay, if this didn't work, we'll try this next thing. If that didn't work, we'll try this. So I had a series of different medications on and off, you know. So...
But the marijuana was still there.
The marijuana was still
there. Constant.
It was the constant.
It was giving relief, would you say?
It was giving relief. It was giving zen. It was giving peace.
Yeah.
And at some point, I thought to myself, I haven't been to school in over a year. And I have to pretend with my age mates.
Yeah.
I would, you know, when it's 16:30, I'd wear my uniform and come outside so that people be like, oh, she's from school. And I think also having to keep up that took a toll on me, because also I was from a very small town where if I go to a social worker, everybody's going to know that, oh, John Van's child has a mental disease. And so I stopped going there altogether. And I had now to start pretending to say I'm fine. And I had to pretend even in my home to my parents to say I'm healed.
Okay.
So I'm praying, you know, God is good. I'm healed. He saved me. And that just got worse. I think it's been an on and off thing from then to now in recent time, where I'm old enough to say, you know what, I can't rely on my parents to take care of me anymore because I'm an adult now. So I have to make the informed decision. I have to stand to say, this is not the life I want for myself anymore. So the therapist that I dreaded, I started going. And it was so bad that now in my adult years, living alone, I would just rot in my home and nobody knows. I just shut from the outside world. I don't eat. I don't bathe. I don't sleep. I just cry. And you're living like a grouch. And it took so much to say, I can't do this anymore. Because then you have suicidal thoughts and now you attempt suicide. And then God is faithful. By some miracle, you survive, right? And then after that, I said to myself, I can't do this anymore. I need to be better. No one is coming to save me. I have to save myself. And so I start the work. I see the therapist. I tried yoga. Yoga was nice, but that didn't last. I think I was lazy. I'm a very lazy person. I'm a very lazy person. And at some point I was like, I can't do this anymore.
How long did you try the yoga for?
I think close to 6 months, hey?
Okay. But do you say during that 6 months, how was your marijuana intake?
At that point, so after the attempted suicide, right, I stopped. Because then I said I need to change my life.
Okay.
So I changed my apartment. I just changed everything.
Yeah, so how exactly did you manage to stop, since it's something that you had been doing for some time?
It was hard. I will not lie. It was really hard. And also having to do it in secret was also the hardest thing, because when I'm around, I mean, I've known you 24 years and you didn't know this.
Yeah.
So I have to be a person who doesn't smoke. But it's something that I do so much. And it started with reducing the number of times I do it in a day and trying to substitute. And then I substituted it with buying heels.
Okay.
I'm really obsessed with shoes.
Yes, you are. I've seen your shoe rack. Makes sense.
Every time I'd be sad, I'd go to the mall and get a pair of heels. And then, that high. But then also, that was getting too obsessive. I mean, you've seen my shoe rack. It's not healthy. So I needed to find something to replace the marijuana, which I replaced with the heels, to replace the heels. So I started yoga.
Okay.
So the yoga, it worked for a few months. but I didn't have the commitment for it. And so I relapsed again. And
Relapse to the hills or to the marijuana?
I just relapsed to depression, to rotting.
Yeah.
So I was rotting away. I was not taking care of myself.
Were you getting any help?
At the time, no.
Okay.
And it was so bad that I just didn't see the meaning of being alive. At some point, I said a prayer to God and I said, you know what? Just take my life now. I tried it myself. It didn't work out.
Yeah.
Maybe if you do it, call me back, And I think after that prayer, I felt how sad that was, because you shouldn't get to a place where you're praying to die,
Yeah.
It was at that point that I said, I need help. And I opened up to my partner at the time and I said, okay, this is something I'm struggling with. This is something that I'm dealing with. And this is something that I have been dealing with for a very long time. And I need help. And he gave me grace. We tried to go to Chainama. And, but then still I had that thing of, how are people going to see me that I was locked in a mental institution, right? There's so much stigma around that. There's so much stigma around that. So I found a new therapist. Yeah. We started doing the work. We started the medications. And it did work. It started to work. And then because I struggled so much, I decided there could be somebody who is walking this path that I'm walking. Let me speak about it. And that is how I began to speak about mental health. But then in a third person.
Yeah.
I spoke about it in the third person. I started the podcast.
Yeah.
And we had all these guests talking about different things. And eventually, I think one time, you and I actually had a conversation. And you're telling me that, Cece, you need to own your story. And you're telling me a story about you.
Oh, yeah.
We're actually having a podcast about you. Yeah. And you're like, you need to own your story because then nobody can use it against you. And then I was just like, you know what? I'm going to own my story. And I went on social media and just posted and said, okay, I'm dealing with this.
I saw that. It was just so beautiful and inspiring. I saw Africana Woman post about it on her blog. And I'm like...
I was so humbled and also really grateful for the grace and support that I got from my different communities, friends, and my partner who also had been very supportive throughout the journey. And now I'm trying to be a person that other people can see and say, okay, that person has suffered, is still suffering, is still struggling, because unfortunately it doesn't end.
Yeah.
It never goes away. But if we can have all these little things that help us slowly do better, live with it, and, know our triggers and all that, for me, it's a plus. Even if it's just one person who I impact, for me, it's a plus.
Wow. That's so inspiring. It's a beautiful story. I hate that you had to go through that, and I'm sorry you had to go through that, but I like how you have managed to get into the battlefield and fight and try to make a change in other people's life. And I've just realized just how a lot of the times we see people, young people, indulging in unhealthy habits. We see people indulging in alcohol, in smoking, the marijuana, tobacco, and different other vices. And we look at it from the outside and we judge. And it doesn't make sense for us because we look at them and we're wondering to say, but they know the effects of what they are doing, but why aren't they actually stopping? Like, for us, it's a button. We think it's a button that you can just snap and then the person should automatically snap out of it and stop. So it really just shows, you sharing your story shows how there's just so much that influences our behavior and our choice. And I'm looking at how you chose to indulge in marijuana at the time because you needed something. You desperately needed something, and that's what was available. And you did that for years, and it helped you. So I'm wondering, do you have anything you would say to, like, maybe a parent or family or friends who are looking at somebody indulging in something like marijuana or any unhealthy vice?
You know, what you said is actually very true, because when you're looking from the outside, you don't know what a person is going through. Sometimes, quite all right, it's for, this is the wave now. Yeah. Everybody's doing it, so let me do it as well. But then sometimes there's something deeper, and the problem is people, before you understand, you judge first, right? Yeah. And you'd be so quick to say, this is so bad for your health. Hey, you're going to die. Yeah. You know, all that stuff. Yeah. And I think I have gotten to a place where I meet people with grace, because I don't know what demons you're facing, what demons you're battling with. And I think we need to find ways to sensitize people without stigmatizing them. And I think this would play well with the behavioral science, because in the behavioral science, you have habits that counter the vices, right? In a way that is graceful, where you don't have to make a person feel bad than they already do. Yeah. Because when I stopped cutting myself, when I stopped self-harming, I then had to walk around with a rubber band. My therapist told me that instead of literally making yourself bleed, maybe try to...
So it snaps and...
Exactly. So it's not the best thing, but it's the next best thing.
Yeah, yeah.
You see? And even as they speak to me, they're not judging to say, but why are you cutting yourself? You're a big person. Yeah. Don't do that, you know, because you never know what someone is struggling with. But if we could find, and I think also it starts with people being open with these conversations. Yeah. It starts with these conversations, which are so uncomfortable, being had.
And I'm so proud of you for sharing and starting this conversation with your story. Like it's you being vulnerable to the world, and hopefully we can tap into that and learn so much. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Well, we're on the right path, I guess.
Yes, I think we're starting to get there. And I've seen that there's a lot of people now who are advocating for mental health. But then there's still people who are still stigmatizing, which is very shocking. But then also I have come to realize that people hide what's inside by, you know, mocking other things. Because you'd find, I was also a person, I struggled with depression for over 10 years, right? Yeah. But I'd also be like, I would never see a shrink.
Yeah, because I get that.
It cost me zero to say, it is what it is, right?
It's the same thing with even Chainama. Like, people know to say, yeah, you can see a therapist there, but then the thought of, okay, I drop off and I walk to Chainama, how is everybody going to...
That's the thing. So I had to stop being a hypocrite first. So all of us have to stop being hypocrites first if we want to see the change, because we can't see change if we're not doing something ourselves. Yeah. You know that thing for, I'm starting with the man in the mirror? You can't tell your neighbor before you fix yourself.
Yeah.
So if we're not having these conversations, if we're not spreading the awareness, if we're not educating people, because other people genuinely just don't understand.
True.
Others, it's really just negligence. You know what I mean? So if we're not starting these conversations, educating people, spreading awareness, then we're not going anywhere.
Wow. This has been a lovely conversation. It's just, I'm hoping even for the listeners, they realize just how much a lot of our emotions, a lot of things unseen really play a role in what we see on the outside, the behaviors we look at and judge, and the behaviors, the people we call junkies. Yeah. There's just so much more, and sometimes it's not just about the educating of the people, as I always say, to say you can't really keep telling somebody to say this is bad, because the help they need might not be them knowing the negative of what they're indulging in, but it might be much deeper than that. So I'm happy you brought this. It's been an insightful conversation. It's lovely. Thank you so much for sharing this story on Reclamation.
Thank you so much for having me here.
Yeah, so any last words?
It's funny because I tell other people
that, and then now you're like, what am I
I think meet people with grace. Because you never know what people are dealing with and what people are constantly having to battle with. So no matter how you feel you would have acted differently in a situation, meet people with grace.
Wow. That's powerful. That's lovely. She says meet people with grace. I hope this week we will try to look at the people we've been looking at and judging and try to extend some grace towards them, even as we form a picture of who we think they are or might be. That's a very powerful thing. Thank you so much for that, Chonga. Thank you so much,
I'm so happy
Cecie.
for being here. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So that was Cecie. She shared her story of how mental health affected her behavior, how she ended up taking marijuana, and how that was an escape from the depression that she was living with and that she has been living with. And it's been a very insightful conversation. And I think it leaves us with so much to reflect on. So much. We all have people who have behaviors we don't really understand. We're trying to make sense of. We probably even shout at them and judge them for that and don't understand why they're doing it. But maybe this is the time to question if there might be some hidden force behind why they are doing what they are doing. It could also be with you as an individual sometimes. You might find yourself indulging in certain substances or certain behavior that you really want to get rid of, but haven't really understood why you do it in the first place. So this could be a moment to reflect on that. So yeah, that's the end of the episode. Thank you so much for listening. Please do subscribe, share it with somebody who might be inspired by this lovely story. Thank you for joining me till the very end. In the world of behavioral science, every ending is just the beginning of something new. Please remember to subscribe, leave a comment, and stay tuned for more adventures in behavioral science as we continue our journey towards a healthier, more informed decision making. Until then, stay curious, stay vigilant, stay healthy. This is Tabo Lukato Hadunka signing off from Reclamation.